I did, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's go on with what happened with Snow White. I convinced my staff. They were completely convinced to do it. I was delighted. And as I said, yes.
Where did you get the Snow White story? Who was the author of it?
Well, I'll tell you about that, in fact. Because let me just say at this point that as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs began production, we continued making animated shorts. But the studio, well, it started expanding. By 1935, 300 additional artists were added. And meanwhile, I was getting concerned that in order for our company really to move ahead, that I needed to train my staff. But you see, there was simply no place else for them to learn the skills that I was demanding of them. So we held classes every night, and also for 2 half-days each week. You see, I felt that if we wanted to do the fantastic based on the real, we had to first be able to do the real. Now, the Silly Symphony, the Goddess of Spring, was utilized to help our artists with the extremely difficult task of animating the human form. And the Silly Symphony, the Old Mill, it gave our animators the chance to experiment with our very own invention, the multi-plane camera. With the multi-plane camera, we could simulate depth in our cartoons like we never could before. In fact, in 1940, I was granted U.S. patent 2,201,689 for the Art on Animation camera, or the multi-plane camera. Well, but I'm getting ahead of myself. As work continued on Snow White, scenes were added and cut, and when the film was nearly completed, we all decided that Snow White, she just looked too pale. So inkers and painters, they added blush to her cheeks in tens of thousands of drawings, and it was all worth it. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs opened on December 21, 1937 in the Carthay Circle Theater in Los Angeles. Charlie Chaplin, Cary Grant, Jack Benny, Shirley Temple, and George Burns, they were all there. It was a big premiere, a big grand Hollywood premiere, and it was quite a climax to something because it went way back. I mean, all of Hollywood brass, they turned out for a cartoon. You know, it went way back to when I first came out here, and I went to a Hollywood premiere for the first time, and I saw all these Hollywood celebrities going in, and I just had a feeling there. Just said, maybe someday they'll be going in to see a premiere of a cartoon. Because, you know, people would depreciate the cartoon. When I was coming out here, I met a guy and making conversation with people on the train, and he said, are you going out to California? And I said, yeah, I'm going out there. And he said, what business are you in? And I said, I'm in the motion picture business. And he said, oh, you are? Well, I know people in the picture business. What do you do? And I said, I make animated cartoons. And he said, oh. It was like I said, I sweep up the latrines or something, you know? But anyway, it was an exciting thing to have that premiere. And the darn thing went out and grossed $8 million around the world. I don't know why I picked Snow White, as you were asked before. It was a thing I remembered as a kid. Oh, I saw Marguerite Clark in it in Kansas City when I was a newsboy. They had a showing for all these newsboys, and I went and saw Snow White. It was probably the first big feature picture I'd ever seen, and that was back in 1917, or 18, or 16. Anyway, somewhere way back. Anyway, Roy and I, my brother Roy, we were getting concerned about our parents who were running a rooming house in Portland. Their health wasn't great. With the success of Snow White, we could afford to buy them a house in California and hire a housekeeper to help take care of it. And so we did that. But unfortunately, the gas heating in the house wasn't properly installed. My mother had complained of the furnace, that it wasn't operating well, and I sent studio repairmen to fix it. But they didn't succeed. On November 26, 1938, gas fumes spread through their new home. When my father woke up, he found my mother's body on the bathroom floor. He passed out himself, trying to get her out of the room. And when their housekeeper began to feel dizzy, she rushed to check on them, found them both passed out, and got a neighbor to help her get them out of the house. My mother, it was too late for my mother. Dad survived, but never completely recovered. I don't think I ever got over the tragedy either. But for years afterwards, I hated Snow White, because every feature I'd make after that, they compare it to it. But with the cash it earned, I began building a new studio in Burbank. And it was a $3 million investment, and I was personally involved in virtually every element of its design. Oh, and what a design. A beautiful campus, as you can see from out these windows, for our artists and staffers to enjoy themselves when they weren't working. Our offices have outside views, many of which have the north light, which artists prefer. And we have a snack shop, which delivers to employees' offices. And I made sure in our design that we had air conditioning. You see, our animators, they had grown accustomed to calling screening rooms sweat boxes, because these small spaces would, well, they would get unbearably hot sometimes. And so now with air conditioning, of course, every room in the studio is comfortable, even in the heat of the summer. So construction of the studio continued, and we moved forward on 3 new features: Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Bambi. Now, the Pinocchio was a critical success. The loss of foreign markets due to the developing war in Europe and a weaker than expected reception in the United States meant it didn't make as much money as we hoped. And Fantasia had problems at the box office too. And so I had 1,500 workers on payroll, and the studio was $4.5 million in debt. And then a union stepped in to organize my workers and demand higher wages. In late spring, I was hit with a strike. I was deeply hurt by the cruel taunts of my workers, the picketers. So sick was I of this god-awful nightmare that I escaped on a goodwill mission. See, I'd been offered a tour of South America, where our characters had become very popular. But I initially declined because of the strike and our debt. But I was offered $70,000 for expenses, and an advance of up to $50,000 each for 5 cartoons based on our tour, some filmage we make of the tour. Well, in August 1941, my wife and I and 15 of my artists, an entourage we called El Grupo, we visited Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia. Now, rather than combine, or rather than release them separately, we combined the South American themed shorts into 2 packaged films. Saludos Amigos, which was released in 1943, consists of 4 cartoons loosely joined by 16mm footage of El Grupo. Now, although Saludos Amigos was well received in both North and South America, it was a bit overshadowed by its successor, The 3 Caballeros, which was released in 1945, last year in February. Well, The 3 Caballeros begins with Donald Duck receiving a projector and 3 films about strange birds. He meets another bird, Jose Carioca, who takes him on a stylized journey to Bahia, Brazil, followed by a series of wild live-action animated sequences. Well, we invented this character of Jose Carioca especially for these films. He's a South American cigar-smoking parrot, and he really loves to dance. In fact, Donald also dances with a bevy of bathing beauties in Acapulco, flirts with Dora Lutz, who sings "You Belong to My Heart," and he dances with Carmen Molina. Molina, she also dances with a group of animated cacti. Or is it cactuses? No, it's cacti for more than one, right? Right. In any case, the critics praised The 3 Caballeros for its energy, but they were a bit taken aback by Donald's flirtations with live actresses. The New Yorker noted that Molina's dance with the saguaro cacti would seem suggestive in a less innocent medium. While away in South America, my father passed on. And By the time I returned to the studio, the strike had been settled. But never again would I consider my staff an extended family. Business, I now understood, was business.